The intention of Natural Freedom League is to expand the understanding of natural law, which is based on objective morality, and to expose the illegitimacy of the belief in authority, and thus the inherent immorality of all government.
We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the Natural Freedom League, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Natural Freedom League. We are at naturalfreedomleague.com. I'm John Rowland, doing business as John Rowland Wydogen, here once again with my producer and co-host, Chill Will Keller. Hello, Will.
Hey, what's up, brother? How's it going, man?
Oh, it's another day. Not so much another dollar, but there are some dollars in there somewhere,
Love it. Awesome, man. Yeah, this is going to be an exciting episode.
Yeah. We're going to talk today about the Bread and Circuses Boycott, which basically is a movement in my own mind. It's a page on Facebook. I kind of thought about making a website out of it or whatever, but it's really just an idea. Of course, the Bread and Circuses, we have this quote from Juvenal from the book called Satire. Already long ago, from when we sold our vote to no man, the people have abdicated our duties. For the people who once upon a time handed out military command, high civil office, legions, everything, now restrains itself and anxiously hopes for just two things: bread and circuses.
Yeah, man. That's a good quote. It's like bread and circuses. It's the ultimate playbook of distraction.
Right.
This is something that, goes back millennia. To the ancients. And what is it really? It's population control, right? Perception management. So we'll dive into some juicy shit on this one.
Yeah. This is definitely detachment activism, which once again, I was taking Buddhism classes and practicing Buddhism for a few years and started realizing that the way to fight the system is to detach from it. And of course, you got people like Derek Bros, Exit and Build, Freedom Cells, those ideas that this is all part of that. It's this process of detaching from the system, detaching from Babylon. And once you start to do that, you start to notice all the little things that pull you back in. That made me think of a story that one of the first times I noticed this phenomenon in life was when I would go to work, maybe in my late 20s, early 30s. And on the way to work, I would go to like 4 different stops on the way to work, get my coffee, get my cigarettes, maybe stop at 7-Eleven, get some gas, maybe get some lotto tickets, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. All these little things that by the time I got to work at 9 a.m., I had already been pulled in to all this bread and circuses, vices. Society just sets them up for you like a little trap,
Yep. It's like Candyland, the board game. There's all little surprises and shit sprinkled around. They're putting a new 7-Eleven like right down the street. I could walk to 4 7-Elevens. It's like they're just convenience stores, right? Convenience. Yep. It's all about distraction and misdirection, right?
Yeah.
So
the whole system, just the way it's built that way, right? Just even buying things. And another good example, I didn't write this down, just came to mind, is holidays. Oh my goodness. Every month there's a new thing that you got to buy a card for, or it's just, it's set up to, it's nonstop. There's no time to stop, right?
Yep. Prima Material, right? It's matter is prime. It just materialistic. It just wants your attention and your time and your energy constantly on just the physical realm and how you feel and that kind of stuff, man. It's really it is a disease. So anything to stop one from going internally and looking at the spiritual,
Yeah.
right? Which is part of this realm, one and the same.
Yeah.
We're polarized. That's the problem.
It is what a lot of those things have in common, right? They're like distractions or band-aids over a problem, things to pass the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Detachment activism, man. I love that phrase. That's what it's all about. It's all about detaching from the systems of control, right? And by one doing that, you're advocating for sovereignty, for morality, um, it's freedom, all of that stuff. It's I mean, if people don't know right now that we're in a controlled system, that humanity is enslaved, they got a lot of catching up to do and extremely naive. The signs are all around us, right? And that's the problem, is that people need to get out of the mental habits of being attached to these systems, whether it be healthcare, education, entertainment, the political system. We can go down the list, but people are attached to these because they feel like that's the source of what they're getting, right? So there's like a fear of scarcity, that you can only get food from the grocery store. Health only comes from the hospitals and the allopathic industry. Rights and quote unquote freedom and how society operates must come from the political system. It's like, so these are all attachments that people have to the system of control in a whole. And we got to educate ourselves and detach.
yeah. It's definitely part of the shadow work that you need to do. I think that for me, I naturally, it comes easier to me, but I still have my vices. That we talk about that all the time. I think I have a food eating demon that takes me over at like 10:30 at night when I get off work.
Oh man, yeah, the cereal fucking
Yeah,
conjuring happens in the middle of the night for me too, man. It's
yeah,
healthy cereal though.
the cereal
It's
spirit.
whole grains. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, but I think that for me, I've always been the type of person who, even when I smoked cigarettes, I always had in the back of my mind that I was going to quit. Even with sports, following sports with friends at younger, when I was younger, being, you have your team you're born into the Raiders. And, I always made the joke that you're more likely to give up your religion than you are your sports team, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Yeah.
you just pass it down from generation to generation. And But yeah, once I got a little older, I had friends who were really invested in it, gambled on it. I never really got into the gambling aspect of it. That creates a whole new aspect to the sports part of it, but we're going to get into that later. Point being is, as you become aware of these things, they're not easy to let go of all the time, and you just start with one at a time. Just one thing at a time, like cigarettes maybe, or whatever it is, and you just try to detach more and more. And ultimately, what's happening now with the pandemic is that we're all being forced to do it quicker, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And you know, this is a part of the human experience. Vices. We all have vices. Perfection does not exist in this realm. You know, if one's perfect, then they're not truly living in this realm. They've already ascended. We're here to grow internally and evolve. So we all have vices, and that's the best piece of advice, like what you said, man. Just one at a time. Just start knocking them off the list, and you know, obviously, awareness creates choice. So the more information and knowledge you take in, that expands your choices. And so that's why we do this show, right? To get that knowledge out there so people can take that in and have more choices. Hopefully give them that information where they can make better choices, right? That's what we're doing. And so yeah, it's really important. One thing I wanted to say too on generational mind control, this is the problem. We don't, you know, we have lack of knowledge, and we just do what our parents do. Like my family, they're big in sports. They have their teams and stuff. I was really never into sports. I couldn't watch uh, basketball, baseball, whatever. I couldn't do it. It just didn't resonate with me. Um, so that's something that we need to think about too. You know, diet, health, the way worldview, all of this stuff, we're passing it to our kids, and that's generational mind control. So the change starts with us internally and for the individual, and then it ripples out. And so we got to start looking long term in for our kids and the generations to come as well.
Yeah. To touch on the Eastern philosophy bit again, the Buddhism sort of, I saw within Buddhism a solution to that issue of society and, you know, being able to detach from your attachments, the things that hold us back, which are illusory, which a lot of these things are, right? We think we need them, right? But these are things that some marketer has come up with and put out for you to buy, and came up with advertisement to tell you that you need this thing. But in Taoism, there's an idea of action through inaction, and that by just letting things go the way they're going to go, everything will play out the way it's supposed to play out. And I understand that it's important to take action at the same time, but I kind of see a correspondence there with this idea of detaching from. It's like, instead of resisting this beast head on and trying to fight it and scream at it, and, you know, it's just leave it alone, stop participating with it, you know, go again, exit and build, you know. So I can also see where, you know, action through inaction can also, could maybe appear to be a negative thing, or, you know, a weak position, but it's sort of how you look at it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, you know, that's like non-compliance, right? This is right action. If we don't comply or don't feed into the system, and we have options like the exit and build, where we're creating you know, new systems, different systems, then the old control systems just start to crumble and eventually fade out. Um, it's interesting times because there's a lot of duress and coercion going on, and people's rights are being violated. So, you know, depending on what area, it's right there in your face. You got to make different choices. But you know, it's all about right action, and that's the common thread with our whole podcast is morality. That's your foundation. You know, all action is based upon morality, and you know, this gets into right livelihood as well. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, right action, right livelihood. I believe it's the eight noble truths
Mm,
uh of Buddhism. But
mhm.
yeah, like, you know, you start thinking about that, right livelihood. Am I doing something that's contributing to the harm of myself and my fellow humans? um And that's a tough thing for people to look at, right?
Man, how many people actually ask themselves that question? You know, I mean, deep, look in the mirror and ask them if they're doing that. Ask themselves if they're contributing to the current human condition of slavery and violence. Not that many. Not that many, I would think.
No. And people, they make excuses for themselves and they say, oh, well, that's the way things are. I always compared that to the idea that the only two things that are certain in life are death and taxes. And it's like, you get a little older and you're like, wait a minute, taxes aren't certain. Why are taxes certain? And why are they as certain as death, which seems to be very certain? But now I've got to the point that I realized even death isn't certain.
Right? Yeah. Death and taxes. That's such a biggest amount of bullshit, right? That is mind control. I don't know where that came from, but that's a common phrase. It's like, what? Fuck taxes.
My dad used to always say that there's only two things that are certain in life, son: death and taxes. I mean, I guess it's kind of a joke, but it was almost an axiom.
Yeah.
Right? It was,
Sure.
it's just the way it's just what you have to do, right? What are you going to do? And, I've heard that from family members concerning this product that's being pushed on everybody. Well, what are you going to do if you're going to get fired? Well, then I'm going to get fired.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's the fear. That's the fear of scarcity, right? Well, I got to pay my taxes. That's how you contribute to society. How would the roads be built? Parks and playgrounds and stuff. If I don't get the needlecraft, then I'll lose my job. Then what am I going to do? It's like, this is why awareness creates choice, right? So you don't need your job. Fuck that. If that's what they're trying to push on you and violate you, you need to do something on your own. Be your own boss. Create some kind of company where you're taking in donations and you don't have to. It's not on the books, so the government can look and try to steal from you. So this is right up the alley. What we're talking about, detachment activism.
That reminds me of a story. Just the other day, I was at work, and I'm in a building where these guys, they work at the sanitation department, and I'm the janitor. So there's a group of guys. They're pretty cool. They work in the actual shit building where they basically run this. It's crazy, man. It's like this old school factory that processes all this poop, and the computers are hell of old. And anyway, this one, we've talked about all the issues going on, and most of these guys are taking it because they have to, because of their job. And one of the guys asked me, well, what are you doing for the holidays? And I said, well, I won't be with family because I'm basically the black sheep of the family now. And he goes, is it because of political stuff? And I said, well, kind of. I mean, it's more personal probably, but it plays out politically. And the one guy said, boy, I'm glad I just don't know about stuff. But that's how a lot of people are, right?
And that's the problem. This is the root. Out of sight, out of mind. So people turn the cheek. They just don't want to know about it. I don't want to, don't burst my bubble. And that's why we're in the situation we're in.
Yeah.
So, this is real important.
So we're going to start with the bread, since bread comes first in Bread and Circuses, and talk about we've done other detachment activism videos. I believe each of them, our good friend Suzanne came on with us. She is a woman who was my neighbor growing up, and we are kindred spirits, so we connected later in life. And she actually introduced me to Mark Passio, and we've been on this path together for the past few years. And she started her own little local group of families getting together, supporting one another, focusing on self-sufficiency, growing your own food, building your gardens, food systems, trading, what technical skills people have that they can share. And this is definitely a step in the right direction. We had our monthly meeting this week and we talked about some legal language and approaches to protecting yourself. And then Suzanne also presented some information about preparing your pantry for food supply issues. So I'm just going to read the highlighted portion of this document. Step 1, identify several meals, probably simple ones, that your family likes to eat. This often changes seasonally. Stew in the winter, salads in the summer. Step 2, for each meal, write down the ingredients, including spices and supplemental items like rolls or bread. Step 3, for each ingredient, write down the amount required for the meal. Step 4, total all the like items, and you'll see how much of each item you need for a period of meals. Step 5, determine which ingredients you can stock up and which don't keep. For things like sour cream, perhaps it can be frozen. For tomatoes, you can substitute salsa, which keeps longer if jarred. Avocados can be purchased in sealed pouches, processed. She says, action items. Go through this exercise for at least a couple simple meals. Identify what items can be stored and or homemade and or obtained locally via a reliable provider. Determine how to source and or preserve, store the items. Determine the quantity to preserve, store to last the desired time period, 1 month, 1 year. And obtain the items and preserve them. Join together with friends to determine how to can items for preservation and where to source in bulk. So then we went over some different sources. Obviously, everyone would have to look and find locally. In our local area, in the Bay Area, there is Real Food Bay Area. You can go find them at realfoodbayarea.com. That's run by our friend Christina Hildebrand from A Voice for Choice Advocacy. We had an episode with her on a few episodes back. Farmers markets, friends and neighbors, chicken, meat and eggs, rabbit meats, fruits, vegetables, homemade beverages and meals, locally grown spices. And yeah, some other interesting ideas for that. So obviously, I just wanted to go over that because it came up. And how do the ruling class control us with food?
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, if you think about it, the majority of people are dependent on government institutions, right? How many people actually have the knowledge and the understanding and then put that in action, which is wisdom, excuse me, of being self-sufficient, right? And again, I'll say it again, it's that fear of scarcity. To me, since I am an herbalist or studying herbalist and I love foraging, and my daughter and I go forage out in the woods and stuff like that, nature is abundant. There's food everywhere. I do have a little bit of food stocked up, but not that much, because I know I could walk out my door and start walking down the street and hit the hills in my backyard, and there's food everywhere, right? I mean, fantastic food. That's some of it's medicinal. You can use as medicine and just high concentrate vitamins and minerals. I mean, more healthy than the shit they got in the grocery stores. So, there's that knowledge of that. If you don't have that knowledge, then you're shit out of luck, right? You're ignorant, therefore you are easily controlled and manipulated. So big shout out to Suzanne. We do have some documents that can be downloaded from our previous episodes that we did, that she put together, and she does phenomenal work. She's a perfect example of right action, detachment activism. She's started this group, it's growing, and they talk about these modalities of food and self-sufficiency, and that's perfect. That's what people need to do, right? You see, like, the nurses that are getting fired because they're not taking the needle craft. Those nurses should band together and start their own operation. And then people go, oh, well, they have to be licensed and shit like that. No, that's what I'm saying. Fuck the license. That's just asking the government for permission. You know, create a website, create a group, get your information out there, and communicate with people, and you know, create these systems outside of the control mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked before about PMAs, private membership associations, where you can have a PMA and be outside of the regulators and all the different county people that might come and otherwise, you know, force your customers to wear a mask or whatever it might be. And again, I mean, that's just an extra protection. You have a right to do that anyway. But, you know, it may be good to learn some of the legal language and approaches that people are taking, and, you know, kind of verbally separate yourself, verbally detach yourself from the system. Let them know, speak it into existence.
Yeah, man.
It's a big part of it too.
Got to be empowered. So, and that's what they want to do. They want to disempower people. So,
and why don't you talk a little bit about your successes with home gardening? Because I haven't been very successful, but the place we're at, we just don't really get that much sun. So,
yeah. For the past 5 years, I got into gardening. It's one of my passions. I love it. And I just took basically no knowledge and I dove straight in. I did a lot of research, got some books. So I'm gathering all my grammar and all my information, and then I'm putting it into practice where, you know, by trial and error, you just get better and better and better at it. And it's phenomenal. I've grown tremendous amount of food, had to give some away to my neighbors, started making tinctures and salves and butters and infused honey and that kind of stuff, and you know, and then started foraging as well. It's just it's fantastic. I highly recommend people get a foraging book in their local area, and also some type of herbal medicinal book. You know, all medicine, all pharmaceuticals they originate from plants, so the medicine's out there as well, and just gather that knowledge.
right. And let the food be thy medicine.
Absolutely.
Right.
100%. 100%.
And, you know, speaking on the medicine part of it, because obviously that's a part of the bread and circuses too, is that looking into homeopathy, you know, and other approaches, natural approaches to healing and preventative care. It's hard for people to imagine. When we were in that group, we were having the conversation about the nurses doing their own thing and leaving and starting their own healthcare clinics or things like that. And one woman mentioned that she had a friend who was like a biologist, and she could come in and she could test different what bacteria type it was and all this. And I said to her, but in that paradigm, when we're in that paradigm, we won't need to do that. We won't need to test. That testing is part of this paradigm. This idea that I need to find out, is it influenza A or influenza B, or is it strep throat or this or that? We understand it's a level of disease that the body is in. And the cure for those things is typically the same things: fasting, drinking water, cleansing your system, you know, getting vitamins through food, through healthy foods, getting rest, stuff like that. You know, once you go to the doctor, you get that test, you're in the system. That's where the problems arise. And I think people don't realize that enough, but they do need to realize that the third leading cause of death in 2019 and all the years before that was medical mistakes, medical, you know, deaths. And if you add in heart disease and cancer, which were 1 and 2, you could also make a very good argument that those things are caused by the pharmaceutical industry, by the drugs they're taking, by the food we are eating. So yeah, that's my little rant on that.
Exactly, dude. Once you have the eyes to see and you realize that not only is it a control, it's a control system on all levels, right? You are their whole goal is to keep you sick. You're a customer to them, and they want you enslaved mentally, emotionally, and physically. So the allopathic medical industry does way more harm than it does good for health. And this is obvious. When they don't talk about getting sun or eating correctly or exercise or any of that stuff, the basics, the fundamentals, that should be a red flag right there. And there's hundreds of others, but
Yeah, it's definitely the sick care system, not the healthcare system. Um, but I don't think I said this, but we should get into the practice of boycotting restaurants like Starbucks, Pete's, Denny's, McDonald's, especially those supporting the modern day fascism that's going on, um, which is basically all of them. But I mean, we do know that some of them are more closely tied with what's going on, and they're part of the businesses that are allowed to remain open while other mom and pop places get closed down. And we need to make an effort to, as they say, vote with your dollar, right? It's getting our message across through, non-compliance, right?
yeah.
Like you said, non-participation, um, withdrawing consent, right? I mean, as long as we support these companies that are firing their employees because they won't take this product, then we are part of the problem too, right? We're feeding the beast.
Exactly. It's like, what do you stand for? How do you represent yourself? What do you represent? Do you represent morality and nature and what is good for you and your fellow humans and the world, right? You got to prove that and show that through your actions, or non-action, right? We say non-action meaning you're not feeding the beast. But yeah, that's a good point. That's a real good point. I support my local shops as much as possible, um, um, as much as I can. So,
Yeah,
and those are the little things, like you said, baby steps, starting somewhere, that 0 point, and then expanding out and evolving. And it's a good time to have a message, and you could start with where you put your energy.
exactly. The last thing on the food part is the amount of food we eat. We're very influenced in our society to eat more than we need to. Everything is in overabundance, and it's all, a lot of it is bad food that we're eating. I mean, I know a lot of people who listen are probably much better eaters than I am, but I mean, just the amount of food we eat is just ridiculous. We definitely don't need that much food. We probably don't need 3 meals a day. Um, so yeah, that's something to keep in mind in terms of being controlled by your food, is being grateful for the food you have and not wasting it, and also not being gluttonous about it.
Yeah, support your local farm stands as well. It's funny how there's abundance of convenience stores and fast food and all this other bullshit, and they portray a scarcity of organic foods and that kind of stuff. And if you're going to buy organic in the store, the price is like triple the amount. So it's just upside down.
Exactly. So moving on to the circuses. Step 1, kill your cable. Boycott Netflix. things of that nature. You know, again, it's, you know, first step, getting rid of cable. You know, I mean, in our house, we have Wi-Fi and we have streaming services. And so, you know, it's not a huge step, but ultimately it would be nice to completely cut the ties of a lot of that entertainment and the, you know, the crap that they feed us, which, you know, if you're aware of the symbolism and of the mind control that's being pushed through there, then it's not as dangerous probably to us. The more that we become aware of it and awake to it, we can see it. But still,
It creates choice, right?
exactly. And it's just, you know, the waste of time that it, you know, I mean, I know as a kid growing up, we just watched so much TV, movies all summer and just all the time. And that was even way less than what's going on now. And again, you know, this is not being judgmental on people or anything. This is just getting the idea in your head. And again, slowly detaching from these things, because these are all things that I still partake in. And like you said, awareness creates choice, right?
Yeah, man, definitely. Here's a little side note. If you want to cut your cable bill, go out there, get a $25 Fire Stick, right? And then look it up on YouTube or whatever. You can hack that shit. You can watch whatever, whenever. So I like a good allegorical movie once in a while. But
Well, it's nice in that sense too. You kind of control more what you're watching. I mean, the one good thing about getting rid of cable is getting rid of the news. You know, news is short for newspeak, right? That's where they craft the newspeak with their scripted narratives of what's going on in the world. Best bet is to assume that whatever you're hearing on mainstream television, cable, is not true or is some sort of psyop. I mean, just take your pick, you know, even down to, you know, the Jeffrey Epstein story. I mean, I don't trust it at all. I mean, I don't trust anything, but it's just anything that they're giving us, anything that they're telling us that they're pushing, we need to be highly skeptical of it and understand that this problem is not going to be resolved. The problem of human trafficking is not going to be resolved by this woman, Ghislaine Maxwell, Maxwell, going to jail. That's not going to solve the problem. But what's it going to do? It's going to give you a little bit of, oh yeah, see, the system works. It, you know, like we got some justice, right? You know, I mean, I guarantee you, none of these big people are going to get named in this or taken down through this. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But based on what happens and what we know, odds are this is a controlled narrative. There may be some truth to it. Clearly, a lot of things about it are not true. For example, the Epstein Island, it was found that the temple on there was basically fake. It wasn't an actual temple. It was some type of prop building. So again, if that's fake, what other parts of the stories are fake? It's such a salacious story. And mind you, I mean, we don't want to get too deep into this topic, but I've seen the Conspiracy of Silence. I saw that movie probably around 2014, 2013. Try to get people to watch it. People don't want to know, right? They'd rather not know. It's too dark for them. But that, you know, the Franklin conspiracy, you can look that up. The Franklin
cover up.
The Franklin cover up. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Look that up. Human trafficking. Both parties in our government, Republican and Democrats involved. Everyone involved. That story got swept under the rug. Right? This was in the 90s. They ended up throwing the victims in jail, claiming they were having mass hallucinations, things like that. And again, I'm even skeptical of that, right? I'm trying to be skeptical of all of it. But point being, the stories we got from 2016 on, Pizzagate, Jeffrey Epstein, all of that, it all came from a controlled source. It all came from some type of intelligence agency. And it's probably being used to distract us from understanding what was really going on. And they do a great job of it. And I think the solution to it is, again, involves detaching. You protect the people you know. You protect the people in your community. You maybe, fight to educate people, to protect children, right? But don't rely on this system to solve the problem for us. It's not going to solve the problem for us. And how much, again, time and energy is going into this trial and these claims. I mean, it's we've heard it over and over again. Lock Hillary up, all this stuff is going to happen. None of it happens. It's a lot of that Q phenomena. You have to be careful that you're crossing into this misinformation that's being fed to us, especially for people in the truth movement who are on to a lot of these realities and how the system works. These narratives have been hijacked and are now being used to steer us.
Yeah, at 100%. And like I've said many times, perception management, behavior control. You can have an awareness of a variety of things, but don't let it consume you. That's what it wants. It wants to put your consciousness in a box and give you tunnel vision. So you don't look at and understand the causal factors of what's really going on. And, we call this the agenda against natural law. The media, the political, all these categories, they're all illusory, and it keeps you in a feedback loop. I don't watch the news at all. I don't want that shit in my subconscious one bit. But that's what it does. It keeps you in a feedback loop, so you just keep coming back to this type of information, and it creates inaction. So, yeah, good points, man. And real quick, I want to read this quote from Etienne de la Boetie, the French philosopher from way back when. Great quote, and a really good book. People should look into his philosophies. Plays, farces, spectacles, gladiators, strange beasts, medals, pictures, and other such opiates. These were for ancient peoples the bait towards slavery, the price of their liberty, the instruments of tyranny.
That's right.
So it's all distraction, why slavery starts tightening its grips and giving you tunnel vision. So it's all about the state of mind. That's what they want.
Right. And just like politics is rigged, sports are rigged. Politics is theater, sports is theater. And to get into more of this idea, we recommend checking out Zachary Hubbard at Gematria Effect News. You could find it on YouTube. I think he gets taken off YouTube quite a bit, but he has a bunch of backup channels. He also has a website. I believe it's gematriaeffectnews.com. He just gets into the numerology behind a lot of the sports, and it's pretty interesting. I sometimes feel like that information is a bit of a dead end, but it does point to some interesting correspondences that make you wonder, is it really by chance that these numbers are ending up the way they are? And just for an example, I follow a guy on Facebook named Salvador Kabatic. I could be saying it wrong. He had this post the other day about the football game on Thanksgiving Day. Cowboys versus Indians on Thanksgiving Day. It was against the Raiders. Cowboys equal 33. 33 is the number of Freemason obsession. With the game tied at 33-33, a 3-point field goal is stopped 3 times by 3 scripted penalty flags. The 6th all-time overtime Thanksgiving game. The game had a little scuffle, and when it came back from break, they showed player number 33 walking to the locker room. At the end of the second quarter, the clock was stopped at 43 seconds. They made them take 10 seconds off and reset it to 33. The game ends with a Cowboys record of 7-4. 33 is the most important number of Freemasonry, followed by 47/74. The Freemason compass is set at 47 degrees. The tropics that mark the path of the sun are 47 degrees apart from each other. All sports are rigged, scripted. Athletes are modern-day slaves, gladiators of the stadium, Coliseum. Both athletes and referees work together to create distractions for the masses, aka bread and circuses, aka slave food.
Exactly, man. It's well said, and that's so true. That's so true. It's so funny how, with everything going down with the pandemic and shit, Black Friday's still popping off. They got the games, and all you got to do is get the genetic modification, and then you can go back into the Coliseum and enjoy your favorite sports games and all this shit. It's all theatrics, man. It's crazy that people actually buy this shit and fall for it so hard. And sports is one of the biggest mind control techniques. It's like,
Well, and you just see how people are so invested in it. I mean, again, people who gamble on it, people who now play fantasy football. So now they're monitoring all the games, not just the game of their team. I actually did a paper on that in college as to whether fantasy football was a spontaneous thing that the public created, or was it something that the NFL created as a marketing technique? Because whoever created it, it definitely benefited the NFL to get people who are Raider fans, and they always bet on Raider games every weekend, and maybe a few other teams will do parlays or whatever. But now they're in leagues where they get together with friends and they spend time picking teams. And now they've got a player from each team that's on their fantasy team. And now they're looking at all the stats and they're paying. I mean, think about how much more energy is now being expended by people towards this entity, this circus.
Yeah, exactly. These are like loosh fests. It's all about draining your energy. And this is what it really is. It's really a religion, right? I mean, you could see these fanatics. It is a religion, something that holds you back from truth, from nature. And, people need to ditch the NFL and come over to the Natural Freedom League.
Yeah, the real NFL.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that reminds me of, I was ready for when the pandemic hit, and I knew it was, coming. There was a build up to it. And so once it hit, I knew this was crazy. But one of the first things that I knew that something's different about this is when the NBA canceled their games. I mean, that was unprecedented. And it led the way to all the other sports teams canceling their leagues and pretending that this thing was so serious that was a necessary step, when that had never been done before for any other pandemic that happened throughout the years. So I am convinced that the NBA is in on it. They were the first team to come back in the bubble. Clearly all the teams are in on it. All these big corporations are in on it. They're all putting in these steps to test people, and basically it's the biosecurity state, right? And it's being built through this process of and this idea that we're testing and we're keeping people safe. They're really just building the technocratic biosecurity state around us, and all of these people are involved in it. And it really does make me sick to see people still going to the games. But again, these are people who just don't want to know, right? They'd rather be ignorant of it. They'd rather have their bread in circuses, and they don't really see a bigger issue or concern going on. They just think it's all about their day-to-day survival and comfort and just getting through life. And it doesn't appear that those people are on any type of consciousness developing direction. They're not in that, on that path.
Yep, exactly. And this is what it's about, consciousness. And they're making a choice. Whether they're conscious of it or unconscious, they're making a choice really on their soul. They're choosing to devote their energy to this, right? They're sacrificing their personal sovereignty, in a way, in a deep way, right? And their spirituality for these artificial systems that just suck their energy and their life force. And it's all about consciousness. This keeps them in the lower base consciousness, right? The reptilian and the mammalian, where it's all about creature comforts and survival and that kind of shit, which all ultimately leads to a fear-based mentality, especially with everything going on right now. And I mean, thousands of people, took the needlecraft just so the sports can get back on, right? You could see how culture cultivates this religion of entertainment. That's why actors and actresses and sports players get paid so much. That's the value of them in society. They want people to be like this and strive for that. And it's all artificial, and it, like you said, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
But they're making a choice, and unfortunately, they're on the wrong side of history.
Right. And, as we move forward to closing out this conversation, I wanted to touch on another form of entertainment that I've never really been that big into, but clearly is a huge industry, and that is the gaming industry. And ultimately how that ties into this idea of the metaverse, which Zuckerberg might as well call the Matrix. There's already a name for it. Why are we calling it the metaverse? We already know it's the Matrix. But, Will and I have been looking into some knowledge about cryptocurrency and understanding what's coming technology-wise. And this idea of the metaverse, where you are basically on the internet, but you're in this, virtual realm, is coming, and we were watching a video on this today talking about how we already on average spend a year on the internet. And a few days ago, I had this odd meditation where I came to this epiphany that we are already in the metaverse on some level. And I was really envisioning that when I'm online and I'm talking to people online, it's a different experience than when I'm seeing people in person. And there's this whole economy and reality that is taking place online. And we already spend 100 days out of a year. I probably said that wrong earlier. 100 days out of a year already we spend on the internet. So what we believe is, with any tool, that it could be good or bad. So same thing with the internet. We could have said the internet was innately bad, inherently bad, and just totally never participated with it. A lot of people feel that way about smartphones, right? Like, this is the thing that connects us to Babylon. And we realize that's true to an extent, but we also realize that there's an inevitability about this, and that we need to strike a balance between that virtual reality and the capital R reality. And that ultimately, just like Neo in the Matrix, we will probably need to go into the matrix at some point to try to pull people out. Now, this can be a debatable topic. In Buddhism, this is called the Bodhisattva way, right? That, you know, you keep coming back to this realm after you die. You keep reincarnating until everybody is free. Well, what we are seeing in the world right now is a fraction of society and a breakaway society being created. That breakaway society is most likely the metaverse or something involved with the metaverse. And there will be people, just like the people who love to watch sports games and play video games all the time, that they will prefer to be in that metaverse. Now, they have a right to choose that, right? They have a right to choose to take the needlecraft and sign up for this smart city, this smart reality, this smart grid living. And we have a right to separate from that. And it's really interesting, and we've talked about it a lot, to think about what the society is going to look like. And I was saying to Will earlier, what will the people in the smart cities and in the virtual reality, what will they think of the people who don't live there, right? We will be the Aboriginal people to them. We'll be the natives, the savages that don't live in this reality where you don't have to work, you get paid for everything, you're connected to this thing. I mean, we're talking about now this actually being connected to you, right? So this is a whole different podcast episode probably, but we aren't against this thing being built, because ultimately this is about consent, and people are consenting to this. We have all tried to stop people from taking this product. We've tried to warn people of the dangers coming. We've tried to warn people of the agenda. Some people are not going to listen. And I'm kind of rambling now, but it's a very interesting thought to think about as to where we're going and what each of our relationship will be to this virtual reality versus capital R reality.
Yeah, man, good point. And I'm sure we will do an episode on this. You know, they're calling it Web 3.0. And here's the thing, I'll say this, that it's good to have big picture thinking, right? You got to have a balance of both. And this system is being created. It's here, and it is going to advance as well. And someone like me that wants to be very close to the earth and nature, I was anti-technology for a long time, and then understanding that if I'm going to communicate and do the great work of spreading knowledge of objective morality and natural law, I need to use technology. So, like you said, the Bodhisattva way, right? Neo going into the matrix to create change and bring people out. We're going to have to do that as well. So the more balanced and the more we know ourselves, where we are in control of ourselves, our actions, our thoughts, emotions, and actions, then we can use these systems to our advantage, like the DAOs, right? Decentralized autonomous organizations, where, you know, the banks and all these centralized systems aren't controlling controlling people. So we can create these systems, and it's something to look into. We'll definitely dive deeper, but there's opportunity there for a lot of people, and it's good to be aware of it. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, we know people, we've had people on the show who they don't want to use cell phones at all. And obviously most people that you know use a cell phone for almost everything. I mean, it basically is a part of our body now. So we are all going to have to make some tough decisions as to how we're going to balance that out as we move forward. But again, keep in mind the idea of detachment activism, detaching from the things that don't serve you, detaching from those attachments that are illusory. Do you really need them? We need to be able to use our imagination to consider a different way, a different way of being.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Well said.
Final point, listen to local independent music like Funky Fathers, right? All these big bands who are making you take the needlecraft to come to their shows. Screw those guys. Rage Against the Machine. Come on, buddy. What the hell?
Fuck all those guys that are doing that, man.
Fuck
Whack.
you. Fuck you. You better do what they tell you.
Yeah. Exactly, dude. Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's fucking crazy. I will say this though to the viewers. Go to our website, please, naturalfreedomleague.com. And John and I, we got a lot of things in the works. We take this very seriously. We want to upgrade and evolve. So if you are kind and you appreciate our work, we have a donation links on the bottom. And, whatever you can do, we definitely appreciate it, man. We're very grateful.
Yes, definitely. And thanks to all the people that have already donated. We appreciate it very much. We're going to try to keep this going and keep it growing. And I think that's good for this episode. So always remember, have a good one, Will.
Gia, my brother.
Put something good in the air and plant something good in the earth. Peace.
Gia.
We be the natural freedom league, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be the natural freedom league, cause we become no longer unvegan. We seek in the wisdom, and that's why we did come to this prison of prism. And that's why the beat thumps, and that's why we speak up. We be